Right, hey guys. So today I want to talk about the effective way to coach new marketing hires, specifically new remote marketing hires. Um, Now, I'll get to why I'm answering that question, but let me just give you a quick history, right? So, for more than 6 years, I've been working with 100% remote teams. Um, I've been coached by remote managers. I have coached remote team members myself. And, after multiple failures and successes, I figured out how to effectively coach someone remotely. And it's just a couple of tools and tricks that you can apply. Now, the biggest problem, when you're coaching a new team member is that people don't retain the information. They don't remember what you tell them. Like, just to get back to an old story, I'll share a story with when I was back in college. So I was trying to do some things on spreadsheet, and my sister is like a spreadsheet pro. Like, she knows it inside out. Like, she's actually built it. um, and then there were certain things about pivot tables and all of these things, and I'd often come to her and ask the same question again and again and again, and she would just flip out. She would scream at me, and she'd be like, why the hell can't you remember this, all of that stuff. And then, move forward a couple of years, and this one Saturday, I was sitting and I was training one of my team members again remotely, um, about a particular question about marketing analytics, regarding a task that she was working on. And then she asked me the same question she asked me 2 weeks earlier. And honestly, I wanted to rip my hair out. And what's the worst part? That team member didn't even get hired finally. She was actually in a trial phase, and then she didn't get hired. And so what happened was that, you know, initially, when I was hiring a couple of remote marketing team members, initially when everyone was at a trial phase, I would spend my, full energy, a lot of time, probably 8 to 10 hours a week, to just train them, answer their most pressing questions on this particular channel or this particular task or the role that they're, coming in for. And then, um, this person wouldn't end up getting hired. And then I would repeat this cycle again and again. And it was like an endless loop because, uh, before you end up hiring someone, you obviously go through a lot of, trials and, people who move to the late stage of interviews. And it almost felt like I was stuck in a cycle. What was even worse was that half of my week used to go away in training, and I started lagging behind on my personal items. So this just wasn't the right thing. I needed to coach team members in a way that they could remember or retain that information, and in a way that I had to spend the least amount of time. Um, Now, the other challenge when you're coaching team members remotely is, you're working across time zones. So you could literally be in absolutely different time zones. Someone in the US, someone in India, someone in Australia, someone in the UK, like absolutely opposite. So often there'll be a case that it's very hard to make the overlapping work, which is absolutely fine. You're obviously not there in person, so that adds another complexity to when you're coaching someone. You're not available to them all the time, so that means they would not progress on certain things if they're not able to understand how to get past a particular problem. And you don't want them to be wasting the time. um, and so inherently, when you're hiring someone, when you're hiring a remote market, a person, a marketing person remotely, or anyone remotely really, you want them to be independent problem solvers, as independent as possible. That's one trait that you should absolutely look for. If they require constant hand holding, that especially for remote, they're just not the right fit. So you know when you're coaching them, the best way for them to retain or remember that information is if they figure out the solution to the problem themselves and ask questions only and only when absolutely necessary. Right? So, with these kind of requirements and challenges and constraints in mind, and after struggling, having a lot of failures and successes, trying out different coaching systems, reading a lot of coaching books, I kind of figured out uh, a way, a system to make sure that people remember when they're coached. It reduces my time, and I'm going to share that with you. All right. So first, and this is the most tricky part, is instead of you training a person every single time, I have now started creating a detailed training manual before I even hire somebody. So, what does that training manual entail? It's just a bunch of videos recorded by me doing a certain task, explaining how a task is done or what my expectations are, and covering all sorts of scenarios so that every question is covered, like how to log into a certain app, what would you need, how to use a certain app, or some things like how to do a certain thing using this app, or how to write this kind of email, and just these kind of things. So these could be recorded videos. It could be like a document, a Google Doc, could be an Atlassian wiki, anything like that. Just something that's documented and covers the training in an expansive way. What you'd like it to be is something like a product documentation that you see in any of these software products. So when you look at a Trello help desk or an Asana help desk, you see, these guys have covered a lot of questions that pop up in those pop-ups. And that's what makes it easy. When someone asks that question, they don't have to train them again. They just forward them to that article. Now, writing articles, creating a support documentation is super big and super fancy. That's why I suggest just create videos so that people can look at them when they want to. So the first thing is you need to create a detailed training manual. And trust me, it's worth the effort and time. It's not going to take too much time as compared to the repetitive training that you got to do again and again, right? So that's one. Create a detailed training manual. Number two is, and this is the where things get interesting, right? Now, as you've covered all scenarios, or most scenarios, or the most commonly asked scenarios when you're creating your training manual, there are obviously sometimes where a question would pop up that is not in the training manual, right? So if they have any questions, I usually give them an hour each week to answer their most important, most pressing questions, something that's kind of blocking them to do their task. But just an hour. And this hour is basically on a video call. So it could be a Zoom call, or it could be a Skype call, or a Slack call, whatever works for them. And number three of the system is that I don't answer those questions. Now, this may sound super weird, that you're creating a detailed training manual and you're scheduling a 1 hour call, but you're not answering questions. But I'll tell you why. So I don't answer those questions. I just listen 99% of the time and talk 1% of their time, off of my time. And then I get the new hires to answer the questions themselves. And the best way to do that is just, I just say that, look, I know the answer to this question. I can give you the solution. But, I'd like to know first how you would solve this problem. And you can basically start from scratch and then keep asking the right questions that kind of drive them to the right answer on their own. And the benefit of this approach is that it helps them, obviously become better problem solvers, but it helps it retain because they're just wiggling way through their problem and figuring out the solution. So I'll give you a very, very simple example, a real example of what happened. So we had a social media person, and this person came up to me one day and she's like, hey, could you help me figure out how much traffic we're getting from Twitter, how many signups, how many customers we got from Twitter, all right? And I had answered this exact same question a month back when she was filling her KPIs at that time. And this was a recurring question again and again. So I tried this exact technique. I'm like, listen, I know the answer to this question, but how about you tell me how you would solve it? So we start going first. All right, what's the first thing you would do? You would go into the analytics platform. All right. Once you go there, how do you find the traffic of any source? So you would go into the traffic, and how would you find the source? Maybe you filter it out, and then you see the filtered options, then you figure out. And you're not answering the question. You're like, how? What's next? You're basically moving them into the right direction, and that helps them remember that coaching. Now, the next step that I do is, once they figure out the solution, I ask them this question: that what, in this entire session that we did, what do you find the most useful advice in the last 5 minutes of our discussion, right? Or in the last 30 minutes of our discussion? And whatever their answer is will likely stay etched in their memory for quite some time. It could be something like, oh, I figured out that by filtering the traffic on our analytics, we can filter it by so many things. It could be by source, it could be by country, it could be things like that. And that's the thing that you want them to remember, right? So that is effectively how you coach new people. That's how you make them remember. And especially in marketing, that's the way it works. You need them to figure it out. I've done this countless number of times. You can look at content marketing cases, you can look at partnership cases. I can tell you a lot of questions here. Once you have answered their question, I would highly recommend that in your call you should also ask them, like, what else is in their mind, and then they would come up with these questions. Like, they'd be like, oh well, I don't have anything in my mind at the moment. That's pretty much it. And you'd be like, let that silence be then, like, but what next? What next? What next? And as you start, asking these questions again and again and again, and force it out, you start to hear certain things like, oh well, I also wanted to understand how to get the country breakup from analytics data and everything, and those are the things that you want to answer for them. But this is my system. This is something that has worked. This is something that's easy. This is something that can be implemented. um, the tools I use for recording is this tool called Monosnap. It's 100% free. It allows you to record videos, save it on your laptop, and then you can upload it on your Google Drive. You could also use a hosted solution like Wistia, or any of the other solutions that are out there. Now you have plenty of other tools like Soapbox by Wistia. That's 100% free. You've got Loom, all of these places that host the videos. So yeah, I hope this is helpful to you, and um, let me know if you have any questions, if you have any doubts, if there's anything at all that that will help you coach your new remote marketing hires better. All right, all the best.